Using it on that really brings out a lot of colour.
Yeah, that's nice. Bring the fire a little bit closer.
Hi, my name's Tom McCaggerty. I'm a filmmaker and photographer for Waterfront Studios. Today I'm going to talk about the Samsung SSD 830 in this machine and do a comparison with a regular old school hard drive which used to be in this machine before I swapped over to SSD technology. One of my favourite things about the Samsung SSD 830 is that it makes my laptop completely portable. Before, when I was using a regular hard drive, I didn't like to take my laptop out on location because there are so many more hazards around taking a laptop on location than there are by taking it into a studio, for example. Because with a regular hard drive you could drop your laptop and completely wipe all the data on your hard drive. But with an SSD, if you drop your laptop, the worst that could happen is that you could break a screen. Yeah, there aren't many things that can really go wrong, losing data wise, if you drop your laptop. By using an SSD, it ensures peace of mind when I take my laptop out on location for a shoot, and that can speed up my workflow dramatically. If you have a laptop when you're on a shoot, you can look at the images as you take them. With some cameras you can even take the pictures with the laptop using a cable between the two. So being able to review the images and review the footage that I've taken during a shoot as I shoot it has been invaluable to me since I've got the SSD. This allows me to see the footage before I go home and to make sure that I've got all the footage that I need, and I can even perform rough edits while I'm on location still or on the way home from a location. This means that I have the image fresh in my mind while I'm still editing it, so I know exactly what I want from the final image. And by doing rough cuts, you know whether you've got the perfect image or whether you need to change a certain little detail to make it perfect. Not only does using an SSD speed up my workflow on a shoot, but when I get back and I start editing, if I'm editing video files, it can be extremely advantageous to have an SSD on board instead of a regular hard disk drive. One of the most frustrating things that I found about editing video is that you have to render the footage as you edit it. You have to keep on rendering every time you apply an effect or every time you change that effect. Or if you're using an overlay, you have to keep rendering all the time. With a regular hard drive, this can be an extremely lengthy process and can slow you down completely. When using an SSD, the process is sped up dramatically, even when you're using the same processor as you were before. This generally will speed up your workflow and allow you to be more creative with your video if you're not inhibited by irritating and lengthy rendering times. You can even go further than that. If you want to get even more speed out of your SSD when you're rendering video, you can partition it into virtual memory as well. This will work almost like RAM and make rendering video even faster. Although I have read online in several places that it's actually dangerous to do this with an SSD as it will make them wear out quicker, and I don't have the technical knowledge to tell you that that's wrong, so I personally don't actually partition my hard drive to work as virtual memory, but it is possible, and if you know more than me about this, then it may be worth a try. There are a couple of other general improvements of using an SSD over an HDD with your MacBook Pro. I've found that the boot up time for a MacBook Pro is massively sped up when you're using an SSD over an HDD. I can start up my computer in between 6 and 10 seconds from completely powered down, and whereas before I could, press the power button, go get a drink, come back, and it would still be turning on. And when I had a PC, I remember that would take even longer. And I'm sure the other drivers who are using PCs will tell you the exact same thing, that it has sped up their startup time dramatically. Another thing that's sped up when using the SSD is opening apps. I used to open iTunes and it would take, if you're on a Mac, about 4 bounces when the icon just bounces up and down in the dock. Now it's 1 bounce and it's straight up. There are several features in Photoshop and Adobe After Effects that have sped up dramatically since I got my SSD. In Photoshop, the type tool always takes a long time. If you have a lot of fonts installed on your computer, it takes a massively long time to load up the type tool. And now it's just pretty much instant. That gives you more time to play around with what you actually want from all of the tools in Photoshop. And likewise with After Effects, if you're doing motion tracking or camera stabilization, or if you're using a Canon DSLR, like I am to shoot this video, then you will sometimes need to use rolling shutter reduction, and rendering these out and identifying where the keyframes should be in After Effects, which it does automatically. It will do a lot quicker with using an SSD than it would with a regular hard drive. A lot of filmmakers may think that an SSD is slightly out of their price range for what they may consider to be not massive improvements on their workflow, but personally I've experienced these improvements and I think it's actually worth buying an SSD. And if you can't afford it yet, maybe you should just save a little bit more, put a little bit more money aside to really experience the massive speed improvements that an SSD will give to you.